let's begin on time.
Okay.
Whatever we're beginning, we do not have a quorum, so it's going to be informal entirely. You want to move forward and make
Might
us
as
all
well.
feel more informal? And we'll see where we are. I think it'd be useful, at least for me, to recap. The advice to us from town council is that we need to know why we're doing this and what we're doing before she's able to advise us on whether or not we're able to do it, so that we had first listened to what people generally had to say and then started trying to figure out for ourselves what our exact purpose is, and we had gotten a reasonable start on that. And since then, I've been looking at we had agreed it would be good to have our regulation bylaws similar to the others on the Cape, because the more nearly they're all alike, the more likely the enforcement is going to work for us. So taking a look at what other communities have done, it turns out they are not very explicit in what they do. This is what's online for Provincetown. And Article 2, the Article 11, prohibitions related to short-term rental of residential properties. I wonder, have any of you had a chance to look at it?
I looked at it when we first found out about it.
Yeah.
It's
I haven't
not,
looked at it recently.
it's not specific. It's not saying the kind of very definite things that we have at least said we think it ought to be saying. So
Yeah.
I wonder if we want to hold, or maybe this isn't the complete thing. Maura, do you know whether or not the thing that's advertised on Provincetown's website as being their Article 11 is their bylaw, or is there more to it
I
somewhere?
thought it was turned down. I thought it didn't pass, from my
I
recollection.
don't know, I haven't had a chance to look at it.
I believe you
But
said that during the meeting. I could be wrong, but I thought the first meeting we were talking about, the second meeting, I thought it didn't
I thought
pass.
it passed. The
Maybe I'm
Nant-
wrong. Or it was being appealed or something.
Nantucket's is under its second appeal.
Yeah.
So maybe you were thinking about Nantucket.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
But that is not the full bylaw, and I was actually just looking for a copy of the bylaw just before I came over here, because we're gonna use that as a cornerstone.
Right.
And I will have a draft for consideration at our next meeting. So I wanted to get that out to have it, have that be fresh in my mind for today. And I only found those. I will dig for it and I will find it, but that's just the
Yeah,
warrant
it's
article.
clearly, this is a summary of
It's a
some
summary.
sort. Yeah.
I think
Oh, I got it right here.
Oh, you have it. So I'm
I
gonna,
probably have it in here
I'm
too.
just gonna ask Scott for it then.
Yeah, I'll make a copy for you. Yeah,
But you know, for today, if you want, Madam Chair, we could just consider highlighting the things that we think are important to us. And then if there's some other information that's in the Provincetown bylaw that's helpful, we could add it maybe.
Okay. That's fine with me.
Yeah, what I intend to present at the next meeting will just be a jumping off point. So it will likely have things in it that don't work for the group, and maybe it'll just be a discussion point, and then it'll have other things that are absolutely stolen from that Provincetown bylaw. But it won't be, it'll just be a place for us to start to talk.
Right, it's a draft.
Good.
Won't they be borrowed?
Yes, that's right. I never steal.
Borrowed, yeah.
But maybe you could make it a little more specific based on what we come up with today,
That sounds great.
so that we make some use of our time.
yeah.
Okay, so then Doug, did you want to start? What's important to you?
I think that quality of life for neighboring residents is probably the number one.
Yep.
And then housing stock for year-round rental and the effect that short-term rental has on that is a significant factor.
And didn't Barnstable have something summarized quite well? Wasn't Barnstable almost done with all of their, Mashpee didn't really have much, but they were enforcing, because they called me when somebody complained about one of our houses overcapacitating, and then looked on our site and said, well, you're advertising it as a 5 and it's a legal 4, so called the owner and said, we've got some changes to make, and we did. That was a couple of years ago. So I feel like they're running around policing the number.
Yeah, so essentially Barnstable's what we have already. P-Town is 70-80% of what we have already. You got to register. It defines registration. It does a much better job defining things like a regulation.
Yeah.
It essentially does limit things like the fractional ownership and the protection of short existing and, entities owning multiple. It has nothing to do with enforcement. It doesn't have anything to do with noise. It doesn't have anything to do with trash. It doesn't have anything, I haven't found a regulation of any of these that have it. But essentially,
But they seem to be embedded in other health regulations where
well,
those
we have the
appear.
housing code. So the housing code is the housing code. So the housing code essentially will state everything from heat, hot water, anything that would be excessive refuse in the yard. It would deal with appliances. It deals, everything that you would need to have in a home, molds and things like that. It doesn't address, the only thing it would address from a neighbor relationship would be refuse. So trash in the yard, things of that nature. There's nothing regarding noise or, there's an occupancy, but the occupancy is defined by square footage, not by 2 per bedroom.
Oh,
So the actually, it's a lot more. You could have a lot more in the housing code in a house than you could have under let's say, a bylaw that limited, like Nantucket, I think it was 2 per bedroom plus 2, right? It's I don't have it memorized. It's got to do with, it's square foot per bedroom and square foot of general habitable space. It's something like 150 square feet for the first person and 100 square feet after that. But if you have a 1,500 square home, that's quite a few people.
That's too many
Right,
people.
yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, that's what the housing code has in it, okay? Because it's not thinking short-term rentals, it's thinking, apartment buildings and things like that. So urban areas is
But
also.
should we comb
included.
through the housing code to see what does apply?
Well, the housing code will always apply. There's nothing in this regulation that, what do you mean as far as parsing out from the housing code?
I'm going to assume the housing code does apply. We're going to look for what's missing there that we need in
Yeah,
order to.
exactly, right,
Right.
yeah. So the housing code is everything in the inside, and none of it really needs to be in here, other than if you want something more than the housing code, which the rental bylaw now does, right? So the rental bylaw now assumes 2 per bedroom, or the health agent can make a determination, and historically what the health department's done is applied the housing code, because we don't have any other code. So the only thing to be fair would be to apply the housing code number, that square footage metric.
that would over capacity to property. I mean, the application that you have online is 2 per, and that's not changeable. So it's like if it's a
No, that
3-bedroom.
existing one?
Yeah,
No, it is changeable.
Oh, we didn't, online?
It's changeable because it does give a provision for the health department to have another alternative mechanism, which makes sense. So if we went, 2 per bedroom, but there was 2 20 by 20 bedrooms, limiting to 2 isn't inherently a fair
Yeah.
thing, let's say, if somebody was looking for more. So Title V assumes 2 per bedroom, but it doesn't limit you to. You're not taking Title V and telling people they can't have the third, if you live in a 2-bedroom home and you had your 3rd child, you have to move out.
Right.
So the housing code is got a much denser, a good example would be the Royal, where they're looking to make that into almost dormitory. That's the part, section of the code that I gave to the architect, Mr. Keenan, was the 100, the square footage requirements, because that's where it's probably used the most, is more that
The
congregate.
caps I've seen have been 2 per bedroom plus 2.
That was Nantucket, yep. In Falmouth, it's 2, or the health department could make a determination based on size of rooms. And that's what like I said, we historically just applied the housing code, which generally gives people more than 2 per bedroom. That's what the existing bylaw states.
Could somebody appeal and say that they wanted to understand why we didn't use that 100 square foot per person? Because that would be crazy.
Any appeal that would definitely, we have it's what we have a Board of Health for, right?
Right.
So if anybody wanted to appeal a decision, whether it was a violation of tobacco sales or a Title V variance to a lot line, they would come to the Board of Health, and the Board of Health would make a determination.
Right.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Because when you say 15 people in a 1,500 square foot house, that's an average large cape.
Well, yeah, I can't, it's like 150
wait.
square feet per person, and then 100
150.
square, no, it's 100 for the first person and like 100, I'd have to look it up.
Okay.
I go right to that code, because then it's also got a bedroom section of 75 and 50. 75 for the first and 50 after that. So you have to use both of them as you're adding this up, because some rooms are small, some rooms might be big.
So maybe we should explicitly say that portion doesn't apply to short-term rentals.
I don't think you need to put it in the reg, because you can go above and beyond the regulation, right? You can't go underneath, you couldn't make it 20 square foot per
Yeah.
bedroom, right?
Right.
Two
But you
per
can go
bedroom
above and
is
beyond.
great.
So your
Yeah.
bylaw can stay 2 per bedroom plus 2, or 2 per bedroom only.
Yeah.
With no variances and no changes whatsoever, and that would be that would be one way to limit
So for
occupancy. if that's what
25
you
years,
want.
I did not know that was changeable, so everybody that filled that out.
I have to be
2 per-
honest, I maybe had 5 or 6 in my lifetime where.
Yeah, that
my career
challenged it.
where They asked, and they said, well, geez, I've got very large
Den
bedrooms.
or-
And I
yeah.
said, well, let me go through and add it up and use the housing code to give a different occupancy,
Interesting.
Gotcha.
but not often.
So we're gonna go with the 2+?
Martina Khan, regarding Barnstable, my mother-in-law had a house for 30 years, 20 of which she did rentals at some point in her time. And it was a 2,300 square foot house, but 3 bedrooms, she was allowed 6 people. So somewhere in the code, there is, like, we've gone through it. Barnstable, if you go through it, it's dozens of pages. When you add, like you were saying, it's not necessarily all in a short-term rental. There's long-term rental, there's health codes, there's other codes. And if you go through parcel by parcel, it is all in there. But she was limited because she had to get home inspections. She had limited some parking. I think she was allowed 4 or 6 cars, things like that. It was based on the size of your driveway. They have very specific laws, and she had to have it all posted for her renters in the house.
Yeah,
Will
that
say-
seems to be a
Well-
requirement. Mara, is it possible,
I'm-
when you put together your draft, that you include the other things that are ancillary to it and not included in it, but definitely part of it, in which it's embedded? So to include that housing code and long-term rentals and, I don't know, accommodations bylaws or whatever other things lean on it and affect it.
Sure, I can put in a catch-all provision that says something like, any short-term rentals are required to adhere to the provisions of local, state, and federal laws, including the Housing Code and the Fair Housing Act.
And also, we're likely to have one of these services that the town manager is looking
The
into
third-party manager.
to help us with the, collating and coming up with the number of units and offering services to people like safety inspections, fire safety inspections and so forth. We might require them to have those things checked off either by a licensed contractor or a building inspector or the service that the town has.
Or we need to require them to carry the insurance for it, for short-term rentals. But I didn't mean just referring to it in your draft bylaw. I meant just collect for us those.
I think we should turn off some of the
parts
mics.
of our own code that will apply to this, just
So-
for identification.
Yeah, when I draft bylaws, I prefer not to specifically refer to them in case if there's a recodification or amendments to the bylaw, then the reference gets lost. So I don't like to reference specific sections of
We're
the bylaw.
misunderstanding each other. I didn't mean for you to name in the draft bylaw. I meant for you to provide us with copies of, so that we know what are the things in which it would be embedded.
I don't understand what you're saying.
So we've mentioned the housing code that would apply to this, a copy that would, of the housing code that applies, so that in one packet.
Or the
we've got the
page.
pieces of our bylaws and regulations that already bear on short-term rentals.
The whole code does. And so because it's living, it's a living, a place where people live and it's a habitation, the whole thing, the whole housing code applies
Yes,
to
but
it.
many parts don't directly. For example, setbacks or all kinds of things that apply to that. But the things that do, as Scott was naming them in the housing code, about trash, about cleaning up, about the safety of the house, those do
Turn it
apply.
on.
And the house would have to have provided those.
It would take me hours of time to do that,
Oh.
to pull out everything except for the parts that don't, because so much of it applies.
And you're bound to miss something.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
everything's in the housing code. We enforce trash complaints all the time. So we already do that, whether it's owner occupied or otherwise, right? So if somebody doesn't put the barrels out because you know, their rental, their trash day's Friday, West Falmouth is Friday. It's always problematic when a rental flips on Saturday and Saturday, or Wednesday, and the trash isn't put out, or the trash is put out too early. If it's put out too early without lids, there's always gonna be trash. We follow up and do that now. It's already in there. So, I mean, the housing code pretty much covers, the zoning part you definitely need to have in, there's nothing zoning wise in there, right?
No, this isn't a zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
So what was just brought up earlier today, I thought was a really good point about the weddings in residential areas. I mean, if it's your own house, you can have your daughter's wedding, of course, but at short-term rentals in residential areas, I don't think they should be able to have professional or, you know, commercial
Events.
wedding venues, and maybe those should only be in business zoned, if there are short-term rentals in business zones.
Well,
Don't you need a permit for a wedding? No?
No, not really.
You would, a tent permit if you had a tent.
Yeah, tent
You need a
permit, band permit, noise ordinance
Yeah.
stuff.
Music, you would need, if you have an amplified music, you'd need
Yeah.
one, not through health, just, and a tent you would need to have.
Who would you apply for the entertainment license, to the select board? I
Yes.
guess? Who? I don't think we've
DJ
ever
would-
seen anybody.
DJ would run and grab that, probably knows, familiar how to do that.
Yeah, but they,
DJ.
I don't recall ever hearing.
Anybody
from
doing it,
anybody.
yeah, and- yeah.
So, yeah. So, you know, again, like I'm looking at Barnstables, like you just mentioned Barnstable. So I printed this out in May, and I'm not seeing they even limit to 2 people per bedroom
I don't think you can,
in terms of.
in a
terms of-
bylaw.
In a bylaw.
It's
Well,
discriminatory.
we currently have a 2 per bedroom in our bylaw now, the 1975 one.
It's discriminatory.
Yeah.
That's why you base it off of the housing code. You have to use the
Yeah.
Title V provisions to determine
'Cause I'm-
occupancy.
Right, because I'm reading Barnstables, and it's essentially an expanded version of what we currently have,
Hmm.
at least Barnstables. So,
I mean, she, for 20 years, she has it posted, and
Yeah.
that's what she was limited to. So somewhere there's a rule in there, do it. And like, I think we had the discussion before, it's one thing when it's your house. And if you have, I'm one of 6 kids, you have a 4-bedroom house, you know, you have to sort of squish kids in there. But when it's people coming for 3 nights, do they really need 15 people staying in a 3-bedroom house? No, they don't. They're trying to save money, but they're
Mhm.
doing it to the disadvantage of everybody around them. So I don't understand how it could be discriminatory. You have limits in a hotel room of how many people can stay. So a
Mike's-
short-term rental is not the same as a long-term rental or
We
a
need to move our
standard
mics
home.
closer, I guess. Pick a mic. Oh, and you need to,
Oh,
you
sorry.
can pull that one off there if it'll come off.
There's a green light,
Do we have
so I guess
remote
it's on.
mics?
Yeah, that's what's on.
I didn't know, since
You
it was
can use
informal,
one of
that I
these.
wasn't supposed to still.
It's true, but
Okay.
people might be watching, who knows?
Oh, okay.
you can come use one of these.
Would you like to sit up
You want
here?
to sit with
Oh, God,
us?
No, thank you.
She's like,
That's
heck
all right.
no.
That's okay, thank you. I have no idea what I just said, what exactly I need to start.
Number of people
Oh, yeah,
per
the number of
bedroom
people.
and,
So it's one thing for people who own a home, it's another even for a long-term rental. But people who are coming in for a few nights, just like a hotel, limits how many people are in a room. I would think, how is that necessarily discriminatory? It's people coming for pleasure, not actually needing, it's not a need to fit that many people, it's a want.
I think what the town council is saying, that in the housing code,
It
those
says
things
2.
are defined.
Right, as 2 per bedroom, yeah.
Well, not exactly.
No.
no, the housing code is
No.
much more than 2 per bedroom.
But the rental, somewhere there's 2 per
Yeah, our
rental code.
existing
Yes.
rental.
Permit.
Existing
Okay.
rental bylaw.
Yes,
From 1975-ish does state 2, or the Board of Health can make a different determination using the housing code.
Oh, I misunderstood that.
Yeah.
I thought you said that the housing code, the Massachusetts housing code had 2 parts.
No, it has the square footage based on bedroom square footage and general habitable space, not counting bathrooms and some kitchens. So there's 2 separate little things, but it doesn't say 2 per bedroom. It uses strictly square footage.
So I guess we need to figure out how we can word it that's not discriminatory, because I think she makes a good point. If you only have 3 bedrooms, but it's a big house.
Well, that was my original point of why somebody with a very large bedroom, and that's when we would give more occupancy to a property if the bedrooms,
are larger.
Yes.
And we do the 2, we won't
We
go
would-
past 2 more than the bedrooms. 3-bedroom home, we won't allow more than 8.
but I think Maura's point was you can't, the housing code is where you have to default to. and not the 2 per bedroom. And so that's what I think Maura's saying, is that if you default to the housing code, you're actually going to have more occupancy.
Well, Maura, given
It
what you
depends.
said.
But, yeah,
It just depends. So every house is gonna have an occupancy permit, and that would be the limitation. You couldn't impose a per person, per bedroom limitation on a house like that.
so as the health agent who has to enforce this after it goes away, that's a nightmare. If we stop measuring occupancy at all and we have to measure, we're gonna have to go to 5,000 homes or 4,000 or 3,250 and physically measure every house.
But
to
hasn't that
determine
already been
occupancy.
done for every house when you
No.
get the?
No, anything that's older won't be on record.
No.
But you can actually just require the homeowner to submit a floor plan.
And then we have to review it, right. So I'm just saying, like to determine occupancy, not having it clean, because that makes it unclean, right? It's a very difficult way to determine occupancy, because every house is unique, that we would have to determine occupancy. It still doesn't get to the original, the original issue of, intermittent things that occur that have over occupancy. Even if we had an occupancy number of 6, at 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday and there's 13, I don't know if they're having a birthday party or doing something nefarious, and that's going to really be the police that's going to enforce it.
Yeah, 10 PM.
Right, and
noise
so,
ordinance.
so some of the enforcement noise, when we get into noise, what's the standard for noise, right? So I'm
There's
just,
a new
Please.
bylaw being
Yeah.
drafted.
is there?
It'll go to November.
It's
town
200
meeting.
feet.
Good.
The police told me it's 200 feet. If you can hear it, like 200 feet from the source of the noise, that is within the,
So we're going to get a new noise bylaw, good, because that's an old one.
It's going to November town meeting, yeah. It'll have decibels. So measurable metrics.
Enforced by,
The police department.
so they'll have decibel meters.
So I've noticed in the last 3 weeks how many cars are sitting at all these houses.
Yep.
And,
That is different. Like, you can limit the number of vehicles.
yeah, per owner. So I have a 4-bedroom that sleeps 8, and there's a 2-car spot in the driveway, and I drove by on Sunday, and there were 6 cars all lined up on the lawn, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I called the owner, and he wasn't happy, but what could he do? They're already here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think limiting, owners are gonna have to enforce that, but limiting a number of cars will help eliminate too many people staying at the house at night.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we can figure out, what do you think is the best way to do that?
Well, one of them had used, I think Barnstable's has, give me 1 second.
I'd say not encroaching over the driveway. I feel like they shouldn't be on lawns. Then that would help the owner from being the bad guy.
So parking restrictions in Barnstable states, the occupant of a dwelling shall use or allow to be used no more than 25% of their front yard and no more than 20 feet of frontage as a parking area and/or driveway.
Wow.
That's, I know, I'm just reading what Barnstable, that's, yeah. It's,
It's something, I guess. But yeah, I would say I agree with what she said, that maybe the number of bedrooms,
1 per bedroom?
1 car per bedroom.
Well, if you have 2 adults sharing a bedroom and they're both taking 2 cars because one has to go to work a couple days a week, then that's,
On a short-term rental?
huh? Oh, yeah. I have people who book 3 or 4 weeks in a row and husband goes back to Boston for work.
but
Yeah,
a
but-
30-day rental is no longer a short-term rental.
Yeah. 31, yeah. I like that 25% though. I mean, I have a bunch of rentals, but I just drove by that and I was kind of shocked they were using the whole front yard. But it was
Yeah.
Falmouth Heights, so it was only a postage stamp, but 6 cars all lined up.
And you never know, it might be just friends going to the beach.
Yep, that too, yeah.
That's again, like, I like the idea of, like Scott said, again, as a percentage, because our neighbor turned their whole entire yard into a parking
Parking lot.
area to accommodate more renters.
Gotcha.
Which,
That's a violation.
That is a very bad owner.
of what?
Lot coverage.
But does lot coverage by paved surfaces or lot coverage by crushed stone?
Right.
So that's not lot coverage.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's movable. Poured concrete would be a different story.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I've read through all these bylaws, they're essentially registered. with some little slight limitations, and they say, I don't like bylaws that say, well, keep the noise down, folks. Like, that's not a bylaw to me. There should be something a little bit more firm than,
Well, that's number 3 on the list, I guess, is register. So we have an accountable person who's going to answer the phone
Yeah.
when there's a problem.
that's an easy one, I think,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we put these guidelines
But
in place,
registration is not the
as long
same
as
as
we make sure
showing
they're not something
on-site
that's,
supervision.
well, you can't really make them be on site, but they have to be responsible and answer the
They'd
phone.
have to be here locally. You'd have to make some
Yeah,
requirement
It
that
would
they're
have to be a
available.
local person who can be
They have to
available.
all come to a
So
real estate
again,
agent.
Barnstable, they have a number you
Yeah.
can call. There's a daytime number and an overnight number. And perhaps the homeowners all have to register, so there could be one general number that everyone can call. And then that person has to have the contact for whoever is the registered owner for it. Because if I live 5 doors down from somebody, I don't necessarily know what their phone number is to call them myself. But if on the town website, there's a phone number you can call, and then all the people have to register. I think a lot of it is people have to register.
The idea that I had was that we put everybody that's going to have a short-term rental, it's going to be listed on the town's website. So you'll be able to say, why are there so many cars over there? Is that a short-term rental? You can look it up, and you'll see the contact number for the person. Because to add another layer of management, I think is a problem.
No, this is actually going to be easy. Is once you hire a company, let's, for example, we hire Joe's short-term rental registration company, LLC. On our website, so if people wanted to complain, they went to the health department, we would say Joe's, with the 1-800 number, and then that's something you can build in with the short-term rental companies is the complaint hotline. Because I can guarantee you, there's no health department in Barnstable sitting there with a 24-hour call.
They have an overnight phone number?
Yeah, so it's got to go to something, and it's probably going, I think they may use like a company like Granicus or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where that would be part of that. That part could happen now without a single change to the bylaw. The bylaw still states you have to register. The manner at which we require registration is completely up to the town staff to make a determination. So like today, we could hire Granicus, build in a system, get these short-term rentals, make them do self-inspections and upload it, make them do X, Y, and Z it up. We can do that now with the existing bylaw. There doesn't need to be a single change. I think the bylaw needs to focus in, if you want to limit short-term rentals in some regards, in some location, but all the registration portion is already something we can do with what we have now.
Well, if you think that it's very doable to have that intermediary to do the phone calls, that way we're not going to have neighbor versus neighbor, because then like she said, if you got an 800 number, you call the company, they call the owner.
That's anonymous.
They're probably going to be more tactful as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all what you want to, you pay. Obviously, these companies can layer from getting you the rentals, giving you the list and saying thank you, to building in all the way to a third-party self-inspection company called Breezeway, right? So Breezeway you can upload your pictures of your smoke detectors, the data on the smoke detectors, and whatever things you want to bake into this. But all that stuff could happen by just requiring the registration, and the manner in which we require registration is the way we require it. So, we could, right, does that make sense?
So we'll have to decide our level of service that we want, figure out
And
the
the level of
cost
fee,
of
yep.
how much that's going to be to manage and own and operate, in the town's part to
Yep.
interact with them. And that probably should be what determines our registration fee.
It's exactly already what we're thinking about. That's already what we want to do. And again, started this in 19, I came here back to town in 18. We started doing this in 19, and that thing hit in 2020,
Yeah.
that we should not name. So then it just sort of stopped everything and so forth. So this thing's been around for 4 or 5 years. So yeah, grabbing the rental registrations and going through a third-party vendor in order to register. Or it might be more through our permitized system or something like that. Obviously, the more work that we have to do, we also don't want a health department that spends 85% of its time on rentals,
Right.
rather than restaurants and septic and communicable disease and mosquitoes and
Yeah.
peaches, right? So we have to bake it in and how we're gonna do this, and that's gonna take a while to figure out how to bake all that in. So I think with this, is you have to determine what you want different other than the registration portion. The registration portion, I think, takes care of itself in terms of that.
I want to limit corporate raiders from coming in here when the economy turns. It's already starting to slow down, and I guess houses are sitting on the market a little bit longer, right?
They are a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say that we need to have something ready within a year, and I don't want to have multiple ownerships by corporations, and I don't know exactly how we do that, because if we say, you can't just say no corporations, because a lot of people have their houses in a
Provincetown has
trust.
said that, Truro has said that. They do say that, no corporations, and you can have LLCs, but all the individuals have to be local and named.
Okay, well then I like that.
And that's gone past the
We can't vote it today,
Attorney
but
General
that's,
Yeah, so
already.
So to read what P-Town has, corporate ownership, short-term rentals are prohibited in dwellings owned by a corporation. Short-term rentals are permitted in dwellings owned by an LLC, trust, or S-corp. Only when every shareholder, partner, or member of the legal entity is a natural person, as established by documentation provided by the applicant at the time of registration. So that's what they have in there.
well, I like that.
Well, so there are some languages around for that portion.
And then for individual ownership, do we want to follow whatever town it was that said 2 per person?
I think it was Great Barrington, but yes, I think it would be better to limit it in that way.
2 per bedroom?
No, per person.
Two per owner.
Oh, 2 per owner, okay.
So owner occupied plus 1.
And then does that mean the husband can have 2 and the wife can have 2? I guess so, huh?
You'd have to decide that.
I guess, well, it'd be discriminatory again if we said the husband could do it and the wife couldn't, or vice versa, right? Or if it's 2 per person or per couple,
This has probably already been decided.
people are probably
because
gonna
of
get
the
divorced
towns
so
that
they
have-
can own more.
This language is already in some other places that have been reviewed by the district attorney, so, by the attorney general.
Mhm.
So it must have been decided somewhere already.
Okay, so if we can follow the lead, if Great Barrington or whatever town it was that did the 2 per person or family, maybe that's how it's worded.
I have Barrington's here. An owner may register or operate only one dwelling unit as a short-term rental. If a person owns 2 properties or owns one and is listed as the manager agent for a second that is owned by an LLC, for example, that person must choose one or the other to be registered as a short-term. No person shall have more than one legal or equitable title or beneficial interest in any dwelling unit used for short-term rental except as provided for above. Any owner may hire a property manager to list and manage them, but the registration must be in the owner's name.
Which town is that?
This is Great Barrington, but it's a different state. Oh, no, Great Barrington's Massachusetts, I'm thinking Barrington,
Right.
Rhode Island, sorry. Up to 2 bedrooms in a dwelling unit or an entire secondary unit on the same parcel may be registered as a short-term rental by right. So,
Let's use their language.
Okay, well, that's 1 rather than 2, but if you think, start with that. We might get some pushback, but we'll see.
Before you leave more, I'll make you copies. I'll write
And did we
these.
decide on limiting the parking?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Yeah, I like the percentage of
Yeah,
coverage of the lot by parking.
unless they already have a paved driveway that was approved, then how many cars can fit on the paved driveway?
Right.
Calculate by bedroom.
Well, I mean, you just can't, it's already paved, they've already given permission for it, can't really say you can only use half your driveway. So it has to, right? You have to figure that out too.
Yeah.
Right, and under the uses, we started to talk about that, no weddings or events or tents or RVs,
Yep.
to
Mhm.
exclude those.
Yeah, I agree. Except if they're in a business zone, do they have the right to have that wedding venue?
No, why would they?
I don't know, just asking.
I can't think why it would automatically come to them for that. When we talked about, maybe we could restrict it to just certain zones, we decided it's totally impractical to try to work on the zone, so I don't know why one zone would have a provision others couldn't have.
Maybe we could just start with, in general, no weddings or commercial events.
No use as a commercial venue
Yeah,
or parking for RVs or tents.
we'll get some angry person at town meeting when that one comes up.
Yep. And would we need any provisions for trash beyond what we already have in the housing code?
No. If anybody wants to everybody wants a nice reading on a Sunday afternoon, I can send you the housing code.
Just, can I find it online? I think I can.
Yeah, I can send it.
It'll probably take several Sunday afternoons, right?
No, it's not that bad.
No?
And the enforcement authority would stay with the housing? With
The Board of Health
with
is,
the Board of Health?
the Board of Health is the enforcement for the housing code.
And how much do we want to fine them for their violations? Places seem to have rising levels, you know, first violation, second, third,
Mm-hmm.
and some of them are really expensive.
Well, the first one should be a warning, right?
A warning, you mean not a fine?
Well, I don't know. You think there should be a fine on the first offense?
Yeah, you've got the rules. not
Depending on the
broken.
severity of it, maybe.
Fine.
I know that there's other places throughout the country and also people within this town and who have worked elsewhere, and the state actually have not only a fine system, but like basically you get a fine the first time, the second time you lose the ability to rent for this long, the third time you lose your ability to rent for an entire year, because these people are just abusing, and that is something I could say who afterwards, who it was, who told me that if you wanted to discuss it with that person specifically, but they have not just money, it's actual, you lose your right after a while
Penalties, yeah.
to rent, because it's not known as, has to be entitled to make money off of their residential home. It's a, you know, it's a luxury to be able to do so, and it's a nice thing that the town is allowing people to do so. So if someone who repeatedly, like my neighbor, abuses it, and also to the point of a driveway, my next door neighbor has a 200-foot-long driveway. So I think there has to be some sort of because they use it as a boat ramp, so there has to be some sort of percentage-wise,
Well, if
because.
it's paved, it was allowed, that's the problem.
Right, but you could still limit it, because they can technically fit 14 cars if someone decided to park all the way down to the water line.
Yeah.
Plus the whole entire ground stone. That's not the driveway.
Yeah, the ground stone is not, that's not
But
permitted.
they use it as parking.
Wasn't that a shared driveway with the house next door?
Yes, so they used to own it. That was the guest
Yeah.
house. They actually owned our house first, and then they built that house, and they built a guest house, and they separated it, and,
Are you in the one by the boat ramp all the way down the end?
no, I'm the one with the 2-car garage in the front of
Okay.
it, yeah. So no, those people have a share, and that's the thing too, they actually share with their neighbor and total disregard to their neighbor.
Right.
But I'm just saying, if you allow them to fill their 200-foot driveway with cars, and then all the gravel to the side,
Yeah, that gravel's not part of that.
That does sound more effective, to go from fines to taking away their right to rent,
Finding them for what?
for violations of any part of what turns out to be the.
Yeah,
the
so, yeah,
bylaw.
that's gonna be the kickers, how to define what these violations would be, and how we're going to measure them. 'Cause-
Well, it could be a violation of any part of the bylaw. It could be a violation of the noise part, the use part, the parking part.
Right, so there really is gonna have to be
People
some
part?
coordination, because unless we staff, I mean, normally the police is gonna come out to these, because normally they don't happen during the day, during normal work hours. So there's gonna have to be some sort of, I don't know how we do that, right? It would be some sort of a mechanism that the police, because the police would have to do most of the enforcement on it. I'm limited, police are limited in their ability to get into a structure. We observe things normally from the street, right? So, yeah, I mean, because if it's got to do with increased in parking, somebody's got to go out there with a tape measure and actually measure that the parking's 100 square feet too much, right?
Yeah,
Or something like that.
I'm concerned about having it be a percentage of.
Yeah, that's, again, I'm the one thinking about the regulation and how you're going to use it every day, right? So, yeah.
I'm thinking that once we get this bylaw in place, the owners are going to review it and start to think more carefully about how they rent and who they rent to.
I hope so.
Yeah, yeah.
And that will probably knock out half of the problems just by having this in place.
Sure, so that it's not so much the Wild West anymore. That's true, but you're still going to run into the problem of a problem person violating, and how do you decide who appears, who sets the violation, who collects the fine?
And once we get this established also, we can send updates to the short-term rental companies, the ones that we're aware of at least, and they will probably program in, that this bylaw is in place in Falmouth.
Add it into the lease.
Yeah.
Actually, my husband, who wanted to be here, something, just as you said, how do you do this? And his thought was, when you send the tax bill out, lots of places have fines as a line. I don't think the Falmouth one does, but couldn't you assess it that way? And so that they have to pay fines because you put it in their tax bill. So it's part of their taxes and then fines. Because, you have late fines, you have other things, but you could do it that they have fines that were established by the health department, because the health department, in reality, 5,000 homes, who are they chasing down? But if you put it that someone in the assessor's office or tax collector, something like that, and you have that line that's in there, well, then it's accountable, and you're telling them, here's your
I
fine.
would say there
and
would be a
we see
lien
it.
on the house if they don't pay it anyways, so they attach to the house? Is that how you can't enforce
You
it?
can only attach certain fines as a lien on property taxes, water liens, sewer liens, things like that. It's all by statute. We couldn't attach these kinds of fines to the property as a lien.
Oh.
Does the town have any kind of fines now for actions by a homeowner?
Well, I mean,
Do we have
we have an,
similar?
There's a whole section, pages of fines for violations of the bylaws.
This one.
So, yes.
Point it the other way.
So there are examples to follow.
Point one of them.
Yep.
Which ones seem to be effective? Any idea?
It depends. My recommendation would be to have a multi-pronged way to punish violations. Fines are difficult to enforce if people don't pay them. And depending on how much it is, if it's a bylaw, you'd be maxed out at $300 for a fine anyway by statute. The Board of Health has, can go higher. I think it'd go up to $1,000 for a fine. Is that right?
well, we have an MGL that'd be $250 a day for failure to comply with an order of
I'm
the
just
Board
saying
of
the
Health.
What are
max
those?
fine
Yeah.
is $1,000.
Yeah.
So, but I would also recommend that not just fines, but that you could and should say that any infractions or violations would possibly result in suspension of the permit to operate or even revocation of the permit. So it's losing your ability to operate the business.
And is the permit the right term, or will it be a license, or a?
It's a permit.
It is.
And it's annual.
It would be annual, renewable, revocable, all
But
of
you have
that.
to take an action to renew it.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. If you don't submit a renewal by a certain date, then it doesn't renew.
So it could be if a fine and collecting a fine is a problem, although the others seem to be doing fine. So we have a $300 limit for the first, and then it's a suspension for X days, and then for a year or whatever,
Right, you
for
could
an
do that.
escalating amount of time.
Right.
You would
Some-
usually use progressive discipline is probably the right term for it, unless it's egregious. And then you go right to revocation if you want to. If you find that there is a series of violations over the course of a weekend where they had a wedding and there were 17 cars parked there and the police were out every single night for noise violations, you could skip a lot of these other intermediaries and just revoke the permit.
Maybe we would say that the fine is between a certain amount and a lower limit and an upper limit, depending on the severity of the offense.
We seem to be limited to 300.
300 is the max, and
Okay.
you need to say specifically in the bylaw how much the fine is. So sometimes you can do first offense is $50, the second offense is $200, and the third offense is $300. The other way to approach it is just to have a flat fine. But what you can't do is say a fine to be determined based on the violation.
Can we go
Okay.
immediately to the 300?
Yes,
Yeah. so that it's, because they're getting more than that a night for what they're doing, you know, so it
Mhm.
has to be
Get their
proportionate
attention.
to.
Hold them accountable. My question on the revoking, if they have a lot of leases lined up for 1 year, when do you tell them they can't? It's almost like a restaurant, you could pull the liquor license very quickly for 10 days or so,
But we
but,
do usually give them a chance to plan it into their schedule.
right, so it'd have to be like the following year, you're not allowed to
Well,
rent,
but that's too bad about that. If
Well,
they've gone
they're
and ruined-
contractually obligated, so I don't know if
They're
we're
not
allowed
actually
to.
obligated.
Excuse
They
me?
were obligated to provide something that they were
Yeah,
licensed to do.
yeah, no,
If
I
you revoke
understand.
their permit, they're no longer possibly
Yeah, the leases would be,
moved.
They'd have to refund the money.
they would have to refund the money.
Okay, yeah, if that's something that
You know, you have
you're allowed to do.
guests that cancel,
Yeah, yeah,
So-
They're just out
100%.
of luck.
Yeah,
You know, they ruined it for themselves.
yeah.
yeah. Well,
If that's enforceable, I'm all for it. Yeah.
I think you're right. I
Well, you
think
don't know till
that
you try.
a warning is probably just not going to be useful. The
No.
warning is that the penalty is there for you.
Well, you listen to the mindset of the people.
Well, you have the warning on the permit.
Right.
Here's how you're gonna adhere to our rules, and, yeah, that's the warning right there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Behave.
The only reason I think maybe you might want to have a warning be one of the possibilities, if it's a minor infraction.
Yeah.
And you just want to send a message, like the trash wasn't put out on the right day or something like that, if it's
Well,
really minor.
then would we word it, you'll be subject to either a warning
Yeah,
or a
up to
fine,
and including, something like that. I
up
can,
to and including
Yeah.
well,
revocation of your,
but how are we gonna hear
Registration.
about these things? If the way we hear about it is because the police have been called, the police haven't been called because the trash wasn't put out. The police have been called because the neighbors are up in arms, and it's much too outrageous, whatever is going on, that they had to call. Have you ever called the police? I've never called the police. What would it take to do that?
Loud noise after 10 PM.
right.
Fireworks,
fireworks would do it.
but they're gone before they get there.
I don't think
So-
I've ever filed a noise complaint.
Right, and I haven't either.
'Cause
I have.
I'm not one that's usually bothered by it, so.
The type of parties that renters that our neighbors have unfortunately has warranted having to call.
Yeah,
When first I lived in my house, Mary and I got in our car to go chasing down, where is that noise coming from? And it was coming from quite a distance away. They were having a wild party, and obviously having a great time. And we just went out of curiosity. We
Yeah.
didn't call the police.
Yeah. I mean, if it's behind your fence, that's a different story. If it's
Right.
right next door,
mm-hmm,
that's a phone call.
Right.
Yeah, especially if we all have to work the next day. I always tell my tenants, we're not on your vacation.
yeah.
We need to go to work in the morning, so.
I
That's
think
the
we have
problem.
to
People
worry
think
about
that everybody here is on vacation.
Yeah, no,
fines and revoking permits for mild incursions. They're not gonna happen. It will be, it's for these outrageous things.
Well, excuse me, yes or no to that, because if you have the same minor violation week after week after week after week after week, then
Oh,
even if
that's
it's
true.
minor, you do it 8 weeks in a row, they have a complete disregard to what the law is, so that's no longer a minor, that's a repetitive
I don't-
action.
I don't
Chronic.
think that was what we were talking about. I think constant repetitive violations would merit something more.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're gonna go the top fine, 300, and then to limiting, removing your permit inch by inch. So that you lose it for, what, a month, and then for the season,
Sure. I mean, that would be determined.
yeah.
We'll still have to figure that out. I'll work on that with the draft.
Okay, that'll be great. So, and the enforcement authorities
about the
there,
people who don't have permits.
Yeah, how do we
Well,
enforce the people who don't have permits? That's a good question.
well, isn't that what the third-party person is all about?
Well, you're not gonna be, they strive for 90%.
We'll never catch them all, because there's some people who have been renting for 20 years to, mostly word of mouth.
Mm-hmm,
And that, for the most part, is probably not a problem,
Yeah.
because they have the regulars and all. So we're never gonna find out everybody, but there will be some that are out there.
As long as it
Where-
helps the ones that are aggravating, then we've accomplished something.
Mm-hmm,
right, we don't have to have 100%,
right.
no. Okay, so, registration requirements, do they need to be different from what they are now?
Well, I think What do you mean for requirements? What you need to have in order to get a registration?
Mm.
Yeah, it
All
will
it
be,
just says is, thou shalt register in the regulation now,
but
so.
now we're gonna have compliance steps before you are capable.
Well, I
of
guess
doing
I'd
it.
ask more of this question. So if you just put you have to register your rental at a certain time every year, that gives me or the health department flexibility to how we want the registration to be completed. Normally a bylaw doesn't say how to register, right?
Well, I'm just-
Requirements for registration, should that be in the bylaw?
Yeah, I have a
So-
list of stuff that will go in there.
You
Yeah.
mean as far as,
You have to have your
You will
fire
have
safety, your building
House
no, I
safety.
get that
rules.
part. I guess I was thinking of a different thing. I was thinking, okay.
Maybe 60 days before your
I thought
first
you meant like
rental.
details on how
You
to
don't know
register.
who's buying and
No,
then
no,
they're
no.
renting.
Yeah,
Right.
as far as like,
January,
yeah,
if they don't own
we
it
can
already.
build
Yeah.
in like
Yeah.
smoke detect, well, you have to comply with the housing code would be the main thing, right?
It'll say stuff like you have to submit house rules that,
Yeah.
you know, to communicate to your
Name,
renters
number.
that it has these sorts of things. You have to have it inspected, it has to be like it'll have all of that sort, like, so the,
Registration has to be complete 30 to 60 days or whatever you think
Yeah,
is
yeah.
reasonable before your
I
first.
was just thinking, I was off on a different.
so all of these things that we started talking about at the beginning, insurance requirements, inspection services, the parking stuff, like that would all go into
Yeah, the
registration.
house manager, whoever the manager of the property
Yeah.
is, yeah.
Must provide
I was
phone
thinking of something
number.
different.
Yeah.
You gonna really have time to work on this stuff now you're running your office by yourself?
Why is that?
Well, this is why I wasn't able to, I wasn't able to provide something today. You know, I definitely will have time to do it for next August. I appreciate you asking. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's busy, you know.
And you never know how busy you're gonna be.
I've got this though, and you know, we've been, this is why I'm so glad we're doing this, because we've been talking and hashing it out, and I really know where this group wants to go with this. And now it just has to be put on paper, but we've got a lot of pieces already. You know, we've been culling bits and pieces from other communities, and we've added our own little flavor to it. So I am ready to present something next month, and.
Then Maura, that's wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
And, thank you. And when do you think we would be ready to go to a town meeting?
I think it depends how much you like what I give you.
And also,
If we
with the
really
rest of the
like what you
group,
give us, would it be this year? November?
Maybe. I don't know what the deadlines are for, the warrant this year.
I think
They're
it's
coming
like
up.
August
I think it's
31st.
August something,
Yeah,
yeah.
it might be even 21st, but I don't know why, I think it's 31st.
We'll see.
Maybe,
if I
because
have
that
it.
would be really good, because then we'd be on the books, would have a whole winter to advertise it and be ready for the next season.
Right.
That'd be really good.
Yeah, that if we had, let's say, a November town meeting to start when, you'd say the 2026 or 2025?
Something like that, yeah, 16.
Oh, put it on the books to have it be effective January 1, 2026?
Yeah,
It's a great idea.
Yeah, that would, yeah, because we need to know how, because it takes time to build that whole thing on, right, that whole software thing. Yeah.
it does. Well, and the
January
town would have to
2026, and
have,
you're like, what?
they'd have to have made a decision about their third-party contractor,
Yeah.
Radicus or whomever. Where's that process?
Is that really true? Is that really essential? I mean, we can.
Well, if you make a
come-
bylaw, that means that we're manually registering 5,000, well, again, no, you can make the bylaw, it's still gonna get the same 250 people.
But we could still get to town meeting, if we get ready in time, we could still go to town meeting to present the concept and whatnot, even if we don't have a company in place and we're not prepared to actually do it. At the town meeting, we could vote that this will take into effect on whatever date we agree is reasonable.
And then we have that date, and it's a goal, and we have to get everything in order.
Right,
Right.
which would be great.
Yeah.
But actually, why plan for such an inefficiency? Why not have the town just move forward on making a decision?
I got the feeling that you guys are getting close, aren't you?
Yeah, we guys.
Scott, did you feel like that?
Yeah, I've,
I know you can't say, but.
The biggest goal is to have them all register, you
Right.
know, so.
Right.
well, again, yeah, would this has to, the things that you don't like about the original bylaw are things you want to, layers you want to add, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the only other thing about the timing of it is maybe you and I can talk about if there's a way to spread out the registrations. Because if we do it like this and there's a start date, effective date of January 1, are you gonna is the town gonna get hit with everyone trying to register?
We wouldn't do a single restaurant for a year and a half. We would just have my restaurant people sit down and just grind through registrations and we have to build in staff for it, yeah, I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, I don't
And
think,
I'm also not, how much lifting are these third-party companies really gonna do? Again, sales versus actual, right?
It's
So
stuff like this.
We get, right,
and they're not all gonna show up at the same time.
yes,
And
they will,
They will?
pretty much. Yeah, they're gonna wanna, well, it'll be spread out probably 3
I mean,
months.
if we get
Your
past,
expiration date's gonna be
if we
December.
get past in November, people can start to check in
They won't.
sometime during the winter?
They won't, though. If we have a bylaw that's effective on a certain date, and people need to be registered by that date, they will submit the application
The
2
day
weeks before the date.
Yeah.
So I have a concern about that part of it, about how do we make the transition to get, I don't know how many realistically people are actually gonna register, but we need to think about what happens if you get 1,000 applications for permits within 2 weeks.
Right, so what's gonna happen is, we don't know who they are right now.
Right,
And we're gonna get a list, and we're gonna be expected from the public to do something with that list. And I think it's gonna take 3 full-timers just to sort of go through it, yeah, so it's gonna be all at the same time.
Can we start the registration process early? Even though we don't have a bylaw to go with it? And just
We already
say,
have, we already have that, we could put, like I said, we could put Granicus in place tomorrow, if we pick them, or GovOS
What's
tomorrow.
holding up picking them, Scott?
Just vetting them, okay?
He's doing it?
Yeah, Mike Renshaw's doing it. Yeah, so we've had some meetings, we had him in person in June, and we've had some Zooms, and, they're looking at, they need to know what our bylaw is and what they need from us. They can give us, again, they can give us the list and walk away, which means I need to hire full-timers just.
No, you must be choosing a
could-
level of service from them.
and they can also help us
Menu
craft a
for that.
bylaw, but we're so far along on it.
And I would think that there's a getting up over the initial hill amount of help you want, and then there's continuing maintenance. There are 2 different levels of service.
Well, that depends. I mean, are we gonna automatically renew, is it gonna be an automatic renew, or we review every time? I'm assuming you don't want me to inspect these,
I mean, if
No,
they're,
they should be
Great.
self-inspected by the
Yeah.
company.
if that's a thing that we can build
if there's no
in.
violations, then they can automatically renew the next year because they've abided by all of the terms. And
Right.
then if there's violations, those people have to,
But with the self-inspection, if we're gonna have them upload pictures of things, somebody has to physically look at that, and we're not just gonna accept it. And
right.
the battery is 1974 on the smoke detector, and it's that
Well, they're not
nasty
gonna get-
Yellow.
They're not gonna get their certificate from the company that offers that self-inspection service.
Yeah,
And if the people can't handle the self-inspection, they'll pay the extra $75, and the company will send out an inspector.
Yeah, and we're getting really way in the weeds. This is what you're hiring the third-party contractor for, is to take care of that.
Right.
And give you the menu, pick it.
Right, but I just want to make sure that if we push this to go to November town meeting, that with a date certain for it to become effective, that we're ready for it to be effective. That's important for this group to understand. So
Well,
that's the only reason why.
Maybe
we're
we can
having
get a
this
sense from Mr. Renshaw for our next meeting to get a sense of what's
Right,
practical.
let's go visit them.
Or can we do minimal and then build it out more as we're gonna learn things as it goes?
Right.
How long is this for? A year? Like, are we in it for 10 years? I mean, I don't mind. I'm here for the party.
No parties.
No, I'm sorry, no parties.
I think we're good, we can at least try to hit the goal of getting this on the warrant in the initial stages, and if it doesn't come together, then, we put a pause and set our sights on April, but I think we go full steam ahead for
Yeah,
now.
it's
Great.
possible.
Well, while you're working on that, Doug and I will go see Mike Renshaw and see if we can get a sense from him of where he is on that, and is it budgeted?
Yeah.
That would, touch a reality there.
Did you have a last statement? I think we're wrapping up.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I want to thank you very much.
Baby steps.
Yeah.
We'll get it done.
I've learned a lot, thanks to. our
We have
lawyers.
too, thanks to you.
Laws from all over the place, and, what Falmouth is, and because I know I learned from Massachusetts that a town can have a stricter law, but they cannot have a lighter law, things like, because I
Yeah, it's interesting.
We'll put you on the crew.
Yeah, right. Actually, I'm happy to help. If you wanted volunteers, that was something that I had thought of, to help the health department, because it is kind of an overwhelming task. That if you had people who, like, they have, what is the Corey form, like for kids who go to school, like if you could vet people and have volunteers go out in groups of 2 to inspect, but I guess if you pay $75 and have someone do it, I'm sure people wouldn't mind doing that, but I'm happy to volunteer. Yeah.
Yep, and thank you.
Especially for next door.
Thank you.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Thank
Thank you all
you.
very much.
Yes, we don't have to
Making
adjourn.
progress, yeah, no adjourning.
Well,
Yeah, I
we
gotta set
are,
up
and
another
now.
Say it again?
The next meeting.
Yeah, are we,
Oh.
Jed gonna get let us know?
27th?
I think
August 27th, I think we said. August 27th.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Have a nice month, everybody.
You
So-
too, thanks.
You do.
Right, thank you, guys.
August 27?
Yeah.
August 27th.
That's
Thank
what's
you.
on the bottom of the agenda that Jed put on there.